To members of the public who are watching the live web stream this evening, and hello to those who may be watching the recording after our meeting. I'd like to call our regular council meeting for Monday, March 8th to order. I'm Mayor Cliff McNeil-Smith, and joining me in the council chamber is colleague Councillor Scott Garnett, and we have our 5 councillor colleagues joining us via Zoom. You can see them on your screen. Good evening to councillors Sarah Duncan, Barbara Fallett, Terry O'Keefe, Chad Rintoul, and Peter Wainwright. Staff joining us in the council chamber this evening, you won't see them on the camera, but you will hear them when they're speaking. Our CEO, Mr. Randy Humble, our Director of Corporate Services, Mr. Andrew Hissick, our Senior Manager of Current Planning, Corey Newcomb, our Corporate Officer, Ms. Sandy Nelson, and joining us via Zoom is our Director of Engineering, Ms. Jen Clary. And thanks to Mr. Will Maxwell, our IT, for keeping us all connected this evening. I'd like to first acknowledge we are holding this evening's meeting in the territory of the WSÁNEĆ Nations. And just one change to the agenda before we have a motion to approve, and that is we do have the addition of a presentation this evening. With that, I would look for approval of the agenda.
I'll move approval of agenda as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Not opposed. That motion carries. Thank you. We'll next move to public participation, and while the COVID protocols are in place, unfortunately we still do not have in-person participation, but we certainly welcome input via written submissions, which would be read aloud, or speaking to council live via Zoom. And we do have just one, we have no written submissions this evening. We do have one speaker, and I'd like to just confirm that Helen Kennedy is joining the meeting now.
Hi.
Good evening.
I'm Helen Kennedy.
Good evening. If you could give us your address, and you have the virtual floor for 3 minutes.
Okay, I understood I would be speaking. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Sure. Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Helen Kennedy. I live at 10382 Albay Road, Lot 4. I am originally from Kelowna, and for the past 14 years, I have operated a successful agriculture tourism business of sustainable farming and managing over 300 beehives. The farm was one of the top 10 things to do in Kelowna, and our honey was ranked as #2 best brand in Canada. I've completed a 5-year program in horticulture from the University of Guelph and worked on committees with the Canadian Wildlife Federation. During university, I completed a thesis on the gentrification of neighborhoods. So I just want you to know I understand all of this. I purchased my residence on October 30th, 2020. I had no idea of the issues surrounding the tree, and at no time was I enlightened. I requested information regarding covenants, etc., of subdivision, or anything restrictive on the title, and was advised there were none. No indication of the danger of the tree or its protective status. I provided the 2 reports from Talbot and McKenzie and my fears of the tree. The first report was May 20th, 2018, prior to construction. 19 trees were inventoried, 9 were recommended for removal, including 4 protected trees. Lot 4, Gary Oak, identified as NT9, and 3 protected trees on municipal property. The 3 protected trees are gone, but NT9 remained, possibly due to verification of parkland dedication. Council on February 19th, 2019, in a special council meeting, decided to accept the cash in lieu contribution for a variety of valid reasons. So Lot 4 would remain a residential lot, not green space. NT9 should have been removed. Post-construction, a prospective buyer ordered the second report regarding the safety of the tree, as it was classified as moderate to a high risk. Staff denied the application. In studying the protective tree bylaws, section 6.5, page 4, items A to G have been violated during construction, as well as item J. NT9 should have been removed. In the same bylaw, page 10, Schedule A, diagram of tree protective fencing, this diagram specifies a minimum protection fence to the outside branches or spread of the canopy, which has been identified in the reports as 9 meters. Since the tree is only 1.7 meters from the wall of my house and concrete retaining wall only 78 centimeters from the base of the tree, there's no way this house could have been built if this procedure was followed. Construction was allowed to proceed in the protected boundaries of the tree. This is today's situation. The tree has clearly been compromised with no ecosystem left, no protection from the wind, an estimated 2/3 to 3/4 of the root zone excavated, and 50% of the critical root zone covered with concrete. The tree is leaning precariously over my home. Areas of bark are removed, dead limbs and lower branches batter the house in the wind. The central leader is showing signs of decline. The tree has few green terminal shoots and latent leaf buds. When I proceeded with this application and asked why the tree was still there, the response was the reports did not relay imminent danger. Please consider imminent danger. Would a parent or a first responder wait for imminent danger to react or to mitigate a situation? Who decides or has the ability to predict the critical point of imminent danger? When that critical point is reached, how long do I have to remain safe under that tree? This is a damaged tree with a total of 10 violations of the protected tree bylaw and a safety rating by professional arborists of moderate to high. Is that more important than the life, safety, health, and well-being of people? Why would the town wish to put me or my neighbors in imminent danger before removing this tree? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. We do have a few other items before we get to that on our agenda this evening, but we thank you for your participating and giving your input. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
That concludes public participation, and I'll next go to presentations, and I'll just confirm that Mr. Bruce Hayes is connected. So I'd just like to introduce...
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce Mr. Sean Bruce Hayes from Jima Cannabis, who would like to present this evening. Good evening.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present to you today about our cannabis location at 9774 3rd Street. So yeah, I am Sean Bruce Hayes with Jima Cannabis. I just want to start out giving you a brief history about Jima, then discuss our proposed location and planned community consultation, and finally just weigh in around the conversation that Council had last meeting around the total number of stores in Sydney, and also talk about some of the benefits that we could bring to Sydney. So Jima is a BC-based cannabis company focused strictly on retail, and we're growing our retail portfolio in BC to 8 stores, focused really in the greater Victoria area and also the Lower Mainland. And Jima is owned by TCAP Equity, and TCAP Equity has a very strong track record in successful BC businesses and Canadian businesses, and a big part of that is due to their relationships with their employees, relationships with their customers, but also relationships with the community. And with cannabis, we really feel it's important to establish those good relationships with the community, mainly because of the stigma that's still associated with cannabis. So we do, for all of our applications, we do extensive community consultation. For this one, we're planning, and for our other applications. So we really want to hear from our future neighbors. We want to hear from the community. We want to hear what they think, but we also want to have the opportunity to educate them. Just like we educate our consumers about the safe and responsible use of cannabis, we try to educate the community about the potential benefits that a legal cannabis store can bring to the community. And something I've been talking a lot about lately is that it appears we are achieving some of the goals set out by the federal legislation, by the Cannabis Act, around eliminating the black market and restricting youth access. Now, obviously, we haven't eliminated the black market, but there's been some significant milestones reached. And to that, we're looking at total sales volume of cannabis. So Statistics Canada has been tracking the total sales volume since legalization and comparing legal sources to illegal sources, so licensed sources to unlicensed sources. And for the last 2 quarters, so Q3 of 2020 and Q4 of 2020, the legal sales have been greater than the illegal sales, and that margin is increasing. And this isn't a surprise to us, but it's definitely positive. And some of the reasons for that is the amount of stores, so the access, the amount of legal stores for consumers. The price point on products has come down. And the variety's increased and people know that they're getting safe supply. And the more market share we can grab from those black market dealers, the better for the community. So that's a big piece we've been talking about. Another thing I've been talking about lately is youth access. And these concerns, the reason I mention these concerns from the community, in community consultation I've done across close to 100 stores across Canada for different companies, these are the common concerns I hear from the community. With youth access, I look at total youth charged and comparing 2017 to 2019, the offenses are down 79%. So that's something very positive we've seen. Finally, what I like to talk about with the communities is, you know, what's happened. We're close to 2.5 years post legalization. So what's happened in those early stores in Saskatchewan and Alberta that have opened? And when I follow up with community groups, with cities, with landlords, the general consensus is just operating like normal retail stores. There hasn't been any major impact, negative impact on the communities. Finally, I just want to quickly weigh in on the discussion around the total number of stores in Sydney, because I think it's an important discussion to have. It's a discussion I've witnessed other cities in BC have, other cities in other provinces have. So I'll just give you our perspective, what we look at when we're entering a new market, and then I'll talk about some of the benefits we could have for Sydney. So when we're looking at entering a new market, one thing we look at is the ratio of number of stores to the population. So kind of a conservative number we look at is 1 store per 4,000. We also like to look at the number of establishments selling alcohol. So how many stores are there? Is it similar to the number of cannabis stores is kind of the benchmark for that. Next, we'll look at similar sized cities and see how many stores they have and how well those stores are doing. For example, Soup, with the population of about 13,000, they have 3 stores open now, with 1 more opening soon. Seashell, population about 9,000, they have 3 stores open right now. And Nelson and Quesnel, both about around 10,000 people, they have 4 locations open. And those are just locations that are approved through the province. That I didn't include any that might be in the pipeline for those cities. So it's our position that 3 stores is kind of comfortable for us entering that market. It's a good number and something we're comfortable with. Finally, I just want to talk about some of the benefits outside of the objectives of the Federal Cannabis Act, some of the benefits we can bring to Sydney. The first is high-paying jobs. So we are actually higher than living wage. So I believe living wage in Greater Victoria is about $19 an hour, including benefits. We pay our full-time employees $19 an hour plus benefits, and we also have a compensation package based on store performance. That's definitely beneficial to community members and the community. And we also think we can help with some of the impact that COVID has had on retailers, specifically the big shift that has happened to consumer shopping more online, places like Amazon as opposed to main streets. And with cannabis, we've seen that shift hasn't been as dramatic, especially in BC, because they have one option to buy online. So people are still showing up to the stores, and that traffic can help other stores in the area. People going down to shop to their local cannabis shop can help other stores in the area. But I also think it lines up, or it helps achieve one of the goals of the downtown local area plan for city that talks about strengthening and diversifying the local economy through support of local businesses. I think cannabis is a good opportunity to strengthen and diversify the economy in this post-COVID era we're in. Finally, the last benefit that we are passionate about is giving back to the community through charitable donations or through volunteer work, something that's very important to us. So I thank you for this opportunity. I really look forward to your consideration on this, on moving us forward to the public consultation phase, and definitely here to answer any questions. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bruce Hayes. We have received your full application, and we do appreciate that. We appreciate you coming before council and speaking and sharing your views and comments. I will turn to council in the event that there are any questions. Turn to Councillor Rantoul.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks very much, Sean, for your presentation. I certainly take from it that you're certainly familiar with the product and the retail environment for the product. I think you covered off a lot of good points about the product itself and how your company has marketed it in various communities. And I appreciate the context you provided around other similar sized communities and the number of retail locations they may have. But I want to talk about our demographic and your interpretation, because I don't think you addressed that, and I don't know that comparing our demographic to Stooks is a comparable. And I'll use the in your proposal your hours of business operation. You're talking about 7 days a week, open until 11 p.m. is what's outlined there. You know the location, I assume. You've been there, you've seen it. 2 doors to the south, there's a brand new multi-family structure under construction. Directly behind your premises, there's a multi-residential unit. You've done your homework on the product, but on this market, I'd like you to speak to me and talk to me about this 11 p.m. on a Sunday night in that location, because I struggle with that, Sean.
Definitely. Thank you for your question. Starting with demographic, I mean, that's a good point, and it's something misunderstood with cannabis. So legalization happened October 2018. I was in Kenora, Saskatchewan, trying to get a store open, and we weren't open, we weren't ready. But probably first five-ish people thought we're open, elderly people coming by. So I think with demographic, it's not what you think. It's all demographics, all ages of people, because the Cannabis Act governs CBD as well as topicals, and so you'd be surprised on the demographic. It is a wide range of people using cannabis. As far as the hours, I mean, I definitely think that's something that'll come up in our community consultation, and something we're open to amending. If the demand isn't there to be open that late, we won't be open that late. We'll definitely, that's something common in community consultations that we listen to and we respond to, is the hours of operation. And we're flexible on that. That's definitely not a showstopper for us. We don't want to be open if it's not a high demand time. I don't know if that answers your questions.
It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Turn to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. And thank you very much for that presentation, Sean. Building on the point that was mentioned in terms about our older demographic, and then you mentioned, you also have a CBD oil and products that I presume that seniors are using for different ailments and that sort of thing. I presume that's what you're sort of referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess one concern I have is that seniors in particular going to a recreational cannabis store to get cannabis for medical reasons without having consultation with the medical professional. So if a senior comes into your store and asks for, I need something for my arthritis, how do you normally guide them?
Yeah, thank you for your question. That's a good question. Well, we, as a non-medical retailer, we can't speak to anything related to medical. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to really guide people around any medical. It's more about how the product would make them feel. We can't speak to anything medical related. I was more talking about demographics of people that shop there, why people buy from a non-medical retailer as opposed to a medical retailer. There's a variety of reasons, but sometimes it's access. With medical, you have to order online. You have to wait. So some people may prefer a retail location if they're using it for that reasons. But I don't know if that answered your question, but we definitely can't speak to medical. It's more so how the product. So for a CBD, we'd speak to how there isn't that psychoactive component, right? That something with a high THC. That'd be more where the conversation goes than anything medical related.
Right. Also, and thinking again about our older population, and you know, I know a lot of folks that do use it for medicinal purposes, and they're just now starting to realize that many of them can get it online. They can get a consultation online with a doctor. They can order it online, have it quickly delivered, and also covered by a lot of extended health plans now. So I wonder, given that that's kind of our demographic, have you thought at all about how the medical use might cut into the recreational use? Is that something that you've thought about?
Yeah, it's interesting because Stats Canada just came out today for Q4, today or yesterday, but I was looking at that, and medical really hasn't gone up much in sales volume. So I don't know why it is, but we tend to see consumers from both sides come into the stores. So yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know enough to really nail that one, but I just, speaking about the demographics, people in the store I could talk about for sure, but the reasons why I'm not too sure on that. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Seeing colleagues, I see no further questions, so I'll thank Mr. Bruce Hayes again for the presentation. Thank you for taking councillor questions. We do have a few items before we get to that on the agenda this evening, but thank you again. So that concludes our presentations. We'll next turn to bylaws. We do have 3 bylaws: the Sewer Services Charges Bylaw, a Water Utility Rates and Charges Bylaw, and a Water Parcel Tax Bylaw. These arise out of decisions council made during budget deliberations, and so we are able to move through 4 motions and approve if we wish this evening. And so I'll begin with bylaw number 2209, the Sewer Charges Bylaw.
I'll move that bylaw number 2209, Sewer Services Charges, Amendment number 19, be introduced for first reading.
Second.
All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Move second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Move third reading.
Second.
All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Move adoption.
Seconded by
Second.
Councillor O'Keefe. All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries. We'll turn to bylaw number 2210.
Move that bylaw number 2210, Water Utility Rates and Charges, be introduced and given first reading.
Second.
All those in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Third reading.
Second.
All in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
And adoption.
Second.
All in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. And bylaw number 2211.
I'll move the bylaw number 2211, Water Parcel Tax, be introduced and given first reading.
Second.
All in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Second reading.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
Third reading.
Second.
All in favor? None opposed, motion carries.
And adoption.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Council? We'll next turn to adoption of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes, those from our regular council meeting of February 22nd and those from our special council budget meeting of March 2nd. We could move those together.
I'll move adoption of both sets of minutes.
Second.
Any errors, omissions, or otherwise? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we do have business arising from minutes. On February 22nd, Council held an in-camera meeting with regards to appointments to public citizen appointments to committees, commissions, and boards, and passed the following 3 resolutions, which I would like to read for information. The first, that Andrew Tidman be appointed to the Advisory Planning Commission for a 2-year term ending December 2022. The second, that the representative seat for downtown retail on the Economic Advisory Committee remain vacant until the next annual recruitment process. And third, that Michael Williams be appointed to the Saanich Peninsula Water and Wastewater Commissions for a 1-year term ending December 2021. I want to thank Andrew Tidman and Michael Williams for coming forward and for volunteering to sit on these agencies, and thank all members of the public who submitted applications. We have no mayor or council reports this evening, so I'll turn to committee reports, and the first is item 12A, and I'll turn to Councillor Duncan with regards to the Emergency Planning Committee. We do have 3 sets of minutes, Councillor Duncan?
Can I move them I'll just move them as a block. Move all sets.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, the motion carries. And I'll turn to Councillor Wainwright with regards to the Beacon Wharf Select Committee.
I'll move that the minutes be received.
Second?
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, that motion carries. And next we turn to staff reports. And item 13A is the GEMA Cannabis Retail License Application at number 102-9774 3rd Street. And I'll turn to staff for an introduction, please. Good evening, Mr. Newcomb.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this application, as you know, is for GEMA Retail at 9775 3rd Street. This was previously reviewed by Council on October 13th of last year. And as Council is aware, you resolved to indicate to the LCRB that you would prefer to see the fit and proper assessment complete before considering it further. So staff were notified on December 19th that the fit and proper was complete and the applicant had passed. We indicated then to the applicant that they were okay to submit for a full application to the town, and we received that full application on February 9th of this year. We've reviewed the application submitted on February 9th, and we found that it's largely consistent with the town's zoning and liquor and cannabis licensing policy. The zoning is compliant. They meet the conditions of use for the zoning, and the provisions of the liquor and cannabis licensing policy are consistent with the application. There are a few potentially minor conflicts in terms of the sensitive use provision in the policy, however. Those are any sort of family-oriented uses or things like that that might be within 100 meters of the proposed location. Both of these are either on the sort of outside radius of that 100 meters or are within the 100 meters but walking on foot on the sidewalk, for example, they're more than 100 meters. So one of those is the museum, which is over 100 meters by sidewalk, but within the 100 meters as the crow flies. And the other one is the Scout Hall, which is just sort of on the edge directly south of the 100-meter radius. And as council is aware, there's also 2 other cannabis stores just outside that 100-meter radius, one on Beacon Avenue and one recently approved on 2nd Street. The one on Beacon Avenue is operating, the one on 2nd Street is not yet operating. Signage and the store frontage proposal is also consistent with the policies, so the signage is consistent with our sign bylaw, and the front window display is intended to be a transparent window with sort of backdrop inside the window and then some displays between the window and the backdrop. So from a staff perspective, we don't have any concerns and recommend move it forward to the public notification process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. I'll turn to council if they have any questions before we look to resolution. Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Newcomb, for the summary of the report. I just want to clarify. So the recommendation is that we go to gather the views of residents on this application. But that is, I take it, because it's not referenced specifically in the report, that it's the opinion of staff that the opportunity to advise no comment to the LCRB has passed. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Rintoul. That option was provided in last year's staff report that went to the October 13th meeting. As council will recall, there was an option to do the no comment or move it forward. That being said, I would say that option is still on the table. Yeah, that's it. I think at any point up until making a recommendation to the LCRB, should council choose to do that, it would be an option.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you. I had expected that perhaps to be referenced here, but I appreciate your clarification, and I'll acknowledge some concerns with the proposal. In part, as I questioned the applicant previously around their intended hours of operation. Having said that, I'll yield my further comments to hear the thoughts of my council colleagues. I'm certainly not opposed to going out to the community to hear their points of view on this application, but I do have concerns. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll continue with questions. I saw Councillor O'Keefe, then Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering, Mr. Newcomb, if you could comment. I'm looking at the distance from the current outlets, if you have a more specific number there. And I just, what my recollection is that Island Health actually recommended a minimum of a 300-meter distance between cannabis retail outlets. But they did provide flexibility to small communities like ours to have some latitude with that. So I just want to confirm that my understanding on that is correct in terms of the 300-meter separation that has been recommended, and confirm the actual distance, if you have it, from the other two locations.
Thank you for the question. Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. I believe the distance for the recently approved Buds Cannabis is about 105 meters, maybe to 110, somewhere in that range. And the distance to the Truth and Alibi on Beacon Avenue is, I think, slightly more, 120 meters, if memory serves. But they're both sort of just outside the 100-meter radius. In terms of Island Health's recommendation, yeah, I would concur that I think their recommendation was 300 meters, but I think also that the recommendation was made on an Island Health region-wide basis, and yeah, they recognized that some municipalities would have different context in terms of their built form, and there was flexibility in that number.
Okay, thanks. That's good for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm following up on Councillor Rintoul's questions, and staff's response was that the no comment option was still on the table, available to us right up to the point where we choose to comment. And I guess I'm just looking for some clarification on that through you to staff. Does that mean that we could gather the views of residents per the staff recommendation, and then after all that's come in, and after a special public participation opportunity, council might still decide they're not going to comment?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wainwright, I assume so. I mean, based on what the legislation says, It essentially just says that if council is going to make a recommendation to the LCRB, you need to gather the views of residents. So I don't think that precludes gathering the views and then deciding not to comment. I'm not sure that that would be a staff recommended course of action, but I think it is a possibility, yes.
So I appreciate the response, and I guess that means that if we found that we got a volume of input that left us confused and uncertain how we should comment, we might choose not to, and nobody could fault us for doing that. I'm not proposing that kind of course of action. I was just looking for clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Wainwright. Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Newcomb. We do have in the report a staff recommendation to consider.
I'll move the staff recommendation. One, that staff be directed to gather the views of residents regarding the proposed cannabis retail store license at 9774 3rd Street, Jima Cannabis, and report back to council with the results. Two, that the methods used to gather residents' views include the following, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council for consideration. A, that owners and tenants in occupational property within 100 meters, 328 feet of 9774 3rd Street be notified by mail. B, that advertisements be placed in 2 consecutive issues of the Peninsula News Review. C, that signage consistent with Schedule D of Land Use Procedures Bylaw number 1380 be placed in the storefront window of the proposed location for a period of not less than 14 days. And 3, that council provide a special public participation opportunity at the council meeting where the public may speak to the proposed cannabis retail store license.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded discussion. I'll turn to the mover, Councilor Wainwright, first.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, before calling the question, Councilor O'Keefe?
Thank you. So I have concerns about a third store in Sydney. First, I want to say again, I'm not opposed to having cannabis in our community. I think it's a good thing to have a safe and regulated place for people to choose it. As the speaker spoke, it is having an impact on reducing, the criminal element, and I think those are all good things. To me, this is a health issue, and I go back again to the guidance that we got from Island Health. And the reason that these requests are coming to us is because senior levels of government recognize that there are adverse effects. This is not like any other business. It's why they've given us the responsibility to balance those intended benefits against the expected harm and do what we can to avoid normalizing it in the community. And so when we talk about normalizing it, one of the things related to that, there's a number of things like keeping the stores away from places where kids hang out. But the other thing is the aspect of limiting the density. And that's why, they recommended a minimum buffer of 300 meters between cannabis retail outlets. And although they did acknowledge that in smaller communities that they were going to give us the flexibility and latitude to change that, what they stated was that we still encourage local governments to follow the spirit of the recommendations. And so for me, that spirit of the recommendations means looking at the density of the stores in the community. So that's an issue with me. I appreciate the comments and understand that the comments made about these stores could be good things to increase the footsteps in our retail community. However, I'll remind people again about Island Health and health officers' cautions about pursuing economic gain from the legalization of non-medical cannabis use. So promoting and protecting health should be our main concern. So, you know, for those who say we should treat these stores like any other business, or that they will bring extra people and vibrancy to the town, or it will benefit our economy, or that we should just let the free market decide how many stores are suitable in our community, I just feel like that's ignoring the advice from health authorities and almost abdicating our responsibility to balance those health issues. I've got some concerns about the buildings that are still under construction, and I guess we won't be able to get input from those people. I might be okay with moving this forward to public getting the views, but again, I'm concerned about going through that whole process and then only to say in the end, we're not going to provide comment. So I'm kind of struggling with that a bit, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I'll turn to Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'll just follow up a little further on Councillor O'Keefe's comments with respect to, as I noted when the presenter was with us, there is a multi-unit residential project under construction 2 doors to the south. I'm concerned that obviously those future residents don't have a voice in this process, but also there are other multi-unit residential buildings in the very close proximity, and I appreciate I put the presenter on the spot somewhat with the hours of operation question, but 7 days a week to 11 p.m. In my mind is in that location is not appropriate, and I trust we'll hear that and more from residents, and I am going to carefully review the responses. Again, our motion here this evening is that staff be directed to gather the views of residents regarding the proposed cannabis retail store at this location. And so I'm really going to try and look for their points of view, because I feel like in this location there's that potential to impact not just the current residents, but near future residents, and I have concerns about that. But I've surprised myself before in this process, and that's happened because I've listened to the feedback that's come in, and I'm prepared to see this go to an opportunity for residents of Sydney to provide their input. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? We have none opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is item 13B, the tree removal application for a tree at 10382 Albay Road, and I'll turn to staff for an introduction. Good evening, Ms. Clary.
Good evening. Thank you. So this tree, you heard from the property owner this morning or this evening already, but the tree was in place prior to a development that occurred at this location. The developer had requirements to follow certain standards of practice by having an arborist on site when they were excavating around the root zone. It's unclear if that happened. However, staff have no reason to believe that that didn't happen. So the developer did submit an application in May of 2020, which was denied by staff. And now the home has sold, and the current homeowner has resubmitted the application for removal of the tree. That about sums it up. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Clary. I'll turn to Council for first any questions before we go to resolution. I'll turn first to Councillor Fallot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Clary. I'm going to look at page 1 of the Talbot McKenzie and Associates report of May 25th. The last paragraph, the last line, it says, therefore, the health of this tree is likely to decline, although it takes several months to a year before signs of health stress become visible in the tree's crown. Now, this report is from this year, and yet the construction happened in 18, so that's almost 3 years ago. Is that correct?
I may have to ask Mr. Newcomb to step in, but I believe the construction was completed in 2020.
Oh, it was completed in 2020. Okay. Then that's where I'm looking at right now. I was working on the fact that if this was from a couple of years ago and that we're looking at the health of the tree now, then surely we've sort of passed the issue of the health, the concern of the health. But when did construction start? If maybe I can start with that one.
We're just turning to Mr. Newcomb, Councillor Fallett.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Fallett. I believe construction on this started late 2019 and completed in mid 2020, something like that.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Newcomb. So if construction happened in 19 to 20, we've had close to a year where based on this report from the arborist, if there was going to be issues within that time frame, it should have shown up at that point. Is that a reasonable assumption, or am I being too liberal with my thinking?
Through the mayor to Councillor Fallett. So yes, I mean, buds will be forming on the tree now, and it would be good to go and review the tree in a couple months again. The arborist report from May of 2020 did recommend that the tree be re-inspected in a year's time. So that would be in a couple months at this time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. That satisfies my needs for information at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fallett. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. In the arborist report, it talked about actions that the homeowner could take to mitigate the risk, and that was reducing the height of the tree and the limbs extending over the roof, having a pull test. I'm not sure what that means, but I presume it's some sort of test to check how well the roots are holding down the tree. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And so did she indicate any interest in taking those actions to mitigate the risk, or I understand that those had been suggested?
So through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe, the report from May of 2020 was actually done by the developer who still owned the property at the time, and it's unclear to staff if they actually did this. It would be, the responsibility of the private property owner to maintain their trees if a tree permit was denied, and staff are not aware if that happened, and we are not aware if the current homeowner would be willing to do that if this is denied.
Okay. And one more question, if I may.
Please.
More related to the fine aspect. So regardless of what council decides to do in terms of allowing the tree to come down or not, it seems that the developer did not follow the rules that they should have in regards to taking care of the tree. An arborist has determined that there was damage to the roots. The tree may recover. However, it seems to me that the developer should be fined either way. So is the fine that, could we still assign a fine to the developer even if we decide to keep the tree up?
Through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe, we would have to go back and look at records and just confirm what evidence we have, I guess. But it's something that we could investigate for sure.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I'll turn to Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff. From what I read in the report, there's no, it seems like there's no clear evidence that there was damage done to the root base. It's sort of an estimate or or sort of a guess on behalf of the arborist. So I think it'd be hard to pursue that angle based on not having factual evidence. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Yes, correct. That's kind of the feeling of staff at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, we do have a recommendation in the report for Council to consider.
I'll move that the application to remove the Gary Oak tree at 10382 Albay Road be denied.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor Wainwright?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sympathetic to the homeowner about issues like this, but there's quite a lot of speculation and not strong evidence that there has been significant damage to the tree and that the procedures weren't followed during the construction. So that makes it challenging. The report that was presented is almost a year old, and in a very short period of time, we should be able to see how the tree is responding to spring, and that would be a significant indicator of the condition of the tree. So to act in haste when there doesn't seem to be that strong evidence of an imminent hazard, when in a short period of time we should be able to get, better information about the condition of the tree, it seems to me to just make sense to wait. I would be happy to postpone the decision rather than denying it and potentially forcing the homeowner to reapply, but I'm not prepared to approve the application at this time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor. I'm sorry, I was looking down when folks raised their hand. If you could raise your hand again for the speakers list. We have Councillor Duncan, Councillor Rintoul, and Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I'm in the same frame as Councillor Wainwright, that I would like to see how this tree actually does when it goes through its next growing season, and we have that option. And I'd rather take it because of the amount of speculation that we do see in these reports. I had asked staff whether there was photographs of this site from before to kind of look at what that tree looked like before construction, and we don't have any, but it does look the same on the Google Earth images, that this building was constructed under a tree that leaned out over it like that. And so this is something that, if that tree is if that's what it looked like when they built it, and then that's how they sold it to somebody, I have trouble kind of taking down a tree for that. We know we've had a lot of applications where the developers were asked to perform specific protections around a tree, did not do so, damaged the tree, and then later it comes back to us saying that they need to remove the tree. And I'm kind of done with seeing that keep coming back to us. And it's unfortunate that somebody bought the house rather than, if something was done to make this tree need to come down, that they did not follow that I'd rather they not be able to sell it or to have to take a very large loss on it. And perhaps somebody would finally realize that there's consequences and they're not going to just be able to apply for it later and get it to come down and voice the fine off onto the homeowner in that case. So the windy season is past. There has never been an imminent danger rating on this tree, so I don't see any problem with waiting a few months.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'll turn to Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I am pleased to hear the windy season is past. It was prevalent just 2 days ago. So I guess with that in mind, that's one lens at which I look at this, and Councillor Duncan's acknowledged whether it relates to climate change, or in the case of this property, its proximity to the water. Obviously, it's more exposed to potentially damaging winds. I thank Ms. Kennedy for her presentation. Obviously, very thorough. Ms. Kennedy's obviously done her homework and understands, this situation very well now. And like my colleagues, obviously, I think we all feel, sympathetic for the situation where someone is in their home, on their private property, feeling endangered or, at the very least, very uncomfortable at the prospect of a tree limb coming through their house and potentially causing bodily injury. And that's the lens at which I looked at this through. And I understand, the developer built the home in that location and the purchaser purchased the home with that tree. But I also think, personally, that it's quite reasonable. As Councillor Duncan noted, there have been instances where excavations around new development have caused damage to trees, and the trees have to be removed later. Given the proximity of this tree to the foundation of the house and the home itself and the manner in which it leans, I do have concerns for the well-being of the tree, and hence the occupants of structures immediately adjacent to the tree. So I'm more inclined to see council permit this application to remove the Gary Oak tree at this address. And at this time, I'm not planning on supporting the recommendation that's before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I turn to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Kennedy's concerns about, in her letter and in her comments about branches banging against the side of the house in the wind. And so that must be very distressing. However, it appears that there are actions that she could take to mitigate the risk. So there was talk about reducing the height of the tree and the limbs, extending over the roof, and having a pull test to ensure that the tree doesn't pose an unreasonable risk of failure. So I would encourage her to take some of those actions to reduce her level of stress. And also doing a pull test would give us some better evidence about what the potential risk of failure might be. As my colleagues have said, a lot is sort of speculation in terms of whether that tree is going to fail or not. It looks like it's fairly healthy right now. It doesn't appear to be imminent risk. There's things that could be taken by the homeowner to mitigate the risk. So I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I'll turn to Councillor Fallett.
Thank you very much. And thank you to my colleagues for their comments. And certainly to the homeowner, I appreciate that the situation, but I'm also looking at making a decision too quickly if we don't have all the information. And here we are in March. I think we should wait. I would actually make another motion. I would make a motion that we review this in June. Leave it for the time being. Don't make the decision tonight, and look at this again in June, and then have a better sense of, is the tree coming through its growing season? And if it is, then I would deny the application to remove it. If it is showing clear signs that it is dealing with stress and issues, and there are concerns about the health of the tree, then I think we should review it. But I will not support the motion as it stands, because I think we should postpone it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor
The decision.
Fallett. Thank you, Councillor Fallett. Before turning to Councillor Wainwright, I'll turn to Councillor Garner if he wishes to speak as a first-time speaker, and then I would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a lot of excellent points made by the rest of council, and I'm sort of leaning that same way too. I was thinking we should give the tree a chance to see if it's going to survive before we decide to allow somebody to take it down. That's why I was going to support denying, but I think it's also wise that if we can delay a decision, if it's possible within the realm of our procedures, that we can do that and wait to see the tree maintains its life. I think that's an important thing to do. I think Councillor Duncan touched on a really important aspect of development and how we need to somehow we have rules in place, and then things like this happen. and there's so much speculation about what damage may or may not have been done to this tree, but we know at other developments that has happened. And to be quite frank, I'm really shocked that the house was allowed to be built this close to a protected tree. I'm sure it was in the realm of what's allowed, but it just doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't sit right. I did a site visit, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe they built a tree so close, or built a house so close to the tree that's protected. But there are some responsibilities for owner as well. And I grew up in the Okanagan, and I didn't know until I moved here that Gary Oaks were protected trees. But if I'm going to purchase a home here, I need to do a bit of research in that regard to know that those are protected trees. And the tree would have been in that condition when purchased, so that's also another aspect. Although sympathetic to the owner, you can see where the tree sits and how it's growing and what it might look like when you're considering purchasing it. So that's also another aspect to this. But I think overall, I think the suggestion of waiting to see whether this tree is going to come through this and be strong and continue to grow, I think is the way I would prefer to go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Before I make my comments and turn to second-time speakers, I do have a question for staff. And the question arises, we do have a photograph, and I was able to attend the location from the street and not have as good a view as might be available. But my question is that it looks to me that approximately 50% of the canopy of the tree, of the existing tree, is actually over the building. And is that a consideration, apart from this tree being, whether it's healthy or not, apart from whether it's on a lean or not, just the fact that there is that this tree seems to be at least twice as high, attending in person, as the structure itself. So it's a significant amount of tree canopy that is over the structure. Again, approximately 50%. Would it be normal for? Is that a consideration that staff looks at in these decisions?
Through to the mayor, I guess that would be addressed with the May 2020 arborist report, where they do recommend pruning and reducing the overall canopy of the tree. As far as reviewing the risk of a tree, they do look at targets that the tree may fall on if it does appear to be a risk. But with respect to having the actual canopy over the house, that's not really something. It would be just that the house is the target if it were to fail.
Thank you, and I'm sorry if it is stated in the report. Is the height of the tree in one of the arborist reports?
I would have to review that and get back to you.
Okay, no, thank you. I'll proceed to my comments, and I think really there's two things. The homeowner spoke to them this evening. They are addressed, but I think they can be more explicit, and that is there's the issue of the health of the tree. And we do appreciate from the staff report that it would be normal procedure for an arborist to supervise the construction. That did not happen, so we're in an uncertain situation. And I appreciate that one of the options before us is to wait another period of time, a few months if that be it, and we may be able to better ascertain the health of the tree. Apart from the health of the tree, there is the location of the dwelling and the proximity of the tree to the building as it exists today, and the fact that it's on a lean. So it is already close to the shore, which will be more subject to wind. As I've commented, I believe something close to 50% of the canopy is over the house. Yes, I appreciate that the homeowner could prune the tree, reduce the height of the tree, remove the limbs closest to the structure, such that in a windstorm a limb wouldn't touch the structure. But the fact that it's on a lean and that much of the tree is currently over the structure gives me some cause for concern, hence my question if that was a consideration. When I look at the perspective of the homeowner made a decision to purchase the dwelling. I think we could assume that a homeowner purchasing a dwelling would assume that the tree was healthy in making the purchase. That it wouldn't necessarily have to do due diligence in purchasing the house to ascertain whether the tree is healthy or not. However, that tree with its canopy, its proximity to the house was there at the time of making the purchase of the house. So if the owner, a prospective owner, had a concern over the amount of canopy or the lean of the tree to the dwelling, I think it might be prudent to look at what possible options are at that point, and that didn't occur, as I understand the circumstances. Having said all of that, I still have a concern with the tree and its proximity and on an angle in the location of this dwelling to the shore. And to me, it's not so much whether this tree is healthy or not. I would love it for us to wait 2 months and for it to be declared perfectly healthy. But I think the amount of pruning that might be necessary or reducing the height of the tree, when is a tree still a tree? If you're making significant changes to a 40-foot or whatever the height of this tree is. So I won't be supporting this motion, and look to council's further consideration. I'll turn to second-time speakers. First, Councillor Wainwright, and second, Councillor O'Keefe.
So it's already been suggested that we might wait to make the decision for a couple of months, and Councillor Follett made the suggestion of June. Can't actually do a second motion like that because we've got a motion on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'll move that we table the decision until June.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Councillor Wainwright, did you wish to comment further?
No, I don't think it needs it.
Okay. Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. My question would be to staff, Mr. Mayor, through you, in regards to if we were to postpone it, where is the onus to bring it back? So what would we expect to happen in June? So is it the homeowner who would be required to have an arborist come in and give us a report that says the tree is just healthy or not? Or is that onus on the town to incur that time and expense?
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. I'm turning to Mr. Humble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, from a staff perspective, in deferring or delaying this decision until June, we would expect that the homeowner would bring it back. We would suggest an updated arborist report be provided at that time, and that it be at the applicant's cost, so that they can undertake the arborist report, the pull test, etc., and that come forward. Otherwise, we could well be in the same discussion on the health of the tree at that time. So I think it makes sense or prudent to include in the resolution that the homeowner bring it back with an updated arborist report at their cost.
Okay, I'll leave it to the mover of the motion to decide if he wants to include those things. Thank you. Or do I need to say that?
You can make an amendment, Councillor, if you wish.
I would make an amendment then that it be deferred till June, and that the homeowner would have a renewed arborist report and a pull test done at their own cost prior to bringing it back to council. Does that cover it, Mr. Humble?
Yes.
Second.
We have moved and seconded discussion on the amendment. See, Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate the effort at compromise here, and I realize this is an amendment to the motion before us to table. I guess my concern with the amendment is likewise, I'm not familiar with what a pull test entails, how practical the request may be over and above the arborist report that you're asking for. So I'm not going to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion on the amendment, all in favor? Opposed? We have Councillor Rintoul and myself opposed. The motion carries. So we're back to the main motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Rintoul and myself are opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Council. We'll just, we've just had a request. We'll recess for 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Councillor Duncan, can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, we'll reconvene the meeting now. Thank you. And we'll turn to the third staff report, item 13C, and I'll turn to staff for an introduction of the Iroquois Park user agreements.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report is relating to 3 agreements with Peninsula Soccer, Pace Sports Association, and Victoria District Cricket Association. The Peninsula Soccer historically hasn't had an agreement with the town for use of Iroquois Park and Breather Park. And then since the cricket individuals have always used the field as well, they've just never had a formalized agreement. And then Pace FC is a new soccer club in the area who would also like to use the field. So this agreement is just formalizing the process, and it's encouraging the clubs to coordinate with each other before coming to the town. And if there are disagreements in the town, it gives staff some authority to make decisions based on the membership size and the long-standing scheduled use of the field. I know that there's been some discussion about the lights in Iroquois Park, and I guess the Peninsula Soccer currently owns them, owns and operates them, and it's really, at this time, it's their responsibility to make agreements with the other users of the field. And it's something that staff didn't feel like the town should take responsibility for at this time. However, there may be some discussion tonight about that. If there's any questions?
Great, thanks, Ms. Clary. I'll turn to any questions Council may have. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Clary. My understanding is that all 3 clubs have gone through this with you, and there's no concerns. They're all happy with this agreement, and they're making arrangements among themselves for things like using the goalpost and the lining of the fields, and express no concerns over the agreements as they're laid out.
Correct, through the mayor to Councillor O'Keefe. Yes, we did work closely with Peninsula Soccer as the existing agreement holder to develop it, and then we provided it to the other clubs to review it before bringing it to council.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We do have a recommendation, staff recommendation, for council to consider.
I'll move the recommendation that 1, that the Iroquois Park usage agreement between the town and Peninsula Soccer Association for use of the Iroquois Park sports field be approved as presented. 2, that the Iroquois Park usage agreement between the town and Pace, PACE Sports Association for use of the Iroquois Park sports field be approved as presented. And 3, that the Iroquois Park usage agreement between the town and Victoria District Cricket Association for use of the Iroquois Park sports field be approved as presented.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. I'm of course in support of this. I'm just reflecting on the comments about the field lights, and I think it is worth having some discussion at some point. I realize we've already gone through our budget process, and we have quite an ambitious workload ahead for staff. And there's actually been no formal request from the Soccer Association to provide support for the lights. But I would just maybe not make a motion, but whether staff might want to mention to the Peninsula Soccer Association that council might be interested in considering a request if they were to bring forth a formal proposal, maybe sometime closer to next budget period. So I'm not making a motion or tasking staff with anything, but I just thought that maybe that's something they might mention to the Peninsula Soccer Association if that's appropriate.
Councillor, I might suggest that without a council resolution suggesting that staff speak to an association that council might be interested in is not the route to go. If I think it would be appropriate for the Soccer Association to bring it forward as they deem fit, or otherwise a council resolution to pursue it further.
Okay, well, I think maybe what I'll do is just that rather than task staff with something at this time, to just leave it to Peninsula Soccer Association to bring it forward as they wish then.
Thank you. Further discussion? Call a question. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll turn to item 13D, which is an agreement for janitorial services at the RCMP facility. We do have a report from staff and a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation that the 3-year agreement with Sweeping Success for providing janitorial services to the Sydney North Saanich RCMP detachment be approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question through to staff, if I may. Listing the prices there, I didn't see anything mention of cost sharing with North Saanich and possible federal provincial. Does this all fall in our lap, or is there any kind of cost sharing involved?
Councillor, it's subject to the cost sharing agreement as all operating costs of the facility are.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. We'll now turn to correspondence, and the first is the Sydney Events Advisory Group, also known as SEAG, their 2020 final report, and we do have a recommendation.
Move receipt for information.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. Any discussion? I would just like to thank SEAG and Morgan Shaw, the chair of the SEAG, for the complete thorough report. And it's impressive to see that the nearly 20 community organizations that are a part of SEAG have continued to meet, although a little more irregularly during the pandemic, but they have kept in touch and kept meeting, and I think that's to everybody's benefit in the community, and thank them for the support and input from all of the participants that we saw in the report. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call a question. All in favor? None opposed. The motion carries. And we'll turn to item 14B, which is a request for sponsorship with regards to Seaweed Days 2021, a letter from Cascadia Seaweed. And we do have a staff recommendation, a particular staff recommendation, which council has seen, but I might first turn to staff if they have a comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So staff have further considered the recommendation to refer this item to the Grants in Aid. We discussed it, and we actually don't wish to make that recommendation. The main reason being that grants are intended for not-for-profit organizations and not businesses. And it's pretty clear that as it currently sits, the detail in the submission is based on the business and not a not-for-profit organization. So furthermore, having read the proposal in more detail, staff have also concluded that a specific request is not actually being made at this time. So accordingly, staff might recommend to council that it might be more appropriate to simply receive the correspondence for information this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Humble. And so we have that consideration before council.
I'll move that we receive the report for information.
Second.
Further discussion? Councillor O'Keefe.
So I sort of understood it as asking us to sponsor. So there is a request for funding, but staff is not seeing that as the case. I guess it seems like an event that is worth supporting in terms of a new business in Sydney, in terms of economic development, whether it's something that might come out of there. So I guess I'm just worried if we just receive it for information, is that going to be the end of the discussion on it, or would we be asking them to come back with a more formal request? Thank you.
I could turn to staff, but I think they would certainly be advised of council's resolution, and they would have, the option of returning with a specific request and giving consideration to assistance to a business. Did you wish to continue, Councillor O'Keefe?
No, that's fine.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Fallot, then Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It's exciting to think about Seaweed Festival. I haven't really got an idea of what that would entail and whatnot, but kudos to them for coming up with an idea and another business that looks like it's doing well. And I certainly support what they're doing. Where I do run into some problems, it is a business, and I think sponsoring them would be inappropriate. There may be other ways that the town can assist in the festival, but I don't think sponsoring is the right way to go about it at this point. So I'm not in favor of the grants and aid, which is why I just left it as that we receive for information. No doubt the Seaweed Days people are tuning in to the meeting this evening and hearing our comments. And if they have another suggestion of what it is they would like from the town, other than sponsor, then I would be interested in hearing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fallot. Councillor Wainwright.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Councillor O'Keefe bringing up the point. They are requesting sponsorship, which is a $500 level. So it isn't, they haven't asked us. I think they gave us the menu of all their sponsorship options. But Councillor Fallot's point is a good one. This isn't a non-profit. This is a business. It's essentially a conference. Not really any different from any other industry conference. That is of benefit to Sydney, and the nature of the conference is positive in terms of climate action and that kind of thing. But it still would be, it isn't appropriate as grant and aid, and we haven't sponsored this kind of thing from businesses before. So I don't think we should set that precedent. If there are other ways we can provide support short of financial, I'd be open to it.
Thank you, Councillor. Further discussion? I just want to add that, of course, Council, when Cascadia Seaweed first came to present last fall, was very enthusiastic, and we certainly wish them every success. It would be very good for the community. It certainly is appropriate to our connection with the sea as a seaside community, and other comments made from colleagues. So, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. And we'll turn to a request for letter of approval from the Sydney Museum and Archives with regards to their floor refurbishment project.
I'll move we provide a letter of approval for project.
Second.
Second discussion, Councillor Garnett?
Yeah, just thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say this is another example of the excellent grant writing proposals done by Ms. Gerwing at the museum, and how she's been so successful in her term of office there at being successful in bringing all this money to the museum to help offset costs. So just thank you to her, and thank you to the museum. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor? None opposed. That motion carries. We next have items for correspondence for information.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? None opposed. The motion carries. And no notices of motion or motion to go in camera this evening. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, colleagues. Good evening.